The following video was presented by Audience on Demand, programmatic advertising from Publicis Media. Find out more on audienceondemand.de.
We have on stage, to your right, Ludivine Vitet, Country Manager DACH for Adventori. Yes. And in the middle of us two, Pierre-Antoine Durgeat, co-founder and CEO of Adventori. Again, an applause, please.
So yes, I'm Ludivine Vitet, Adventori DACH Country Manager. This is Pierre-Antoine Durgeat, CEO of the company. So we'd like to explain to you today why we feel creativity as a fundamental place in digital advertising. And so we're going to show you how, thanks to technology, obviously, creativity is the real performance lever in online advertising. Before we move on, a bit of a context here and an introduction to the company.
Yeah, so we are very proud to be here and proud sponsor of this day. Thank you for being there and for bringing the weather. Sorry for this obvious thing. So we are a creative ad server. What is a creative ad server? It's an ad server working for advertisers to make sure the content of the creative is as relevant and as useful as possible. So we are making ads on the fly and making sure they contain the best possible information for the end user. We are a pure technology company. That means that we don't buy media, we don't sell media, we don't sell data of any kind. We are just transforming data into creative on the fly to make sure the content of the ad works better. Just a simple value. And we have a baseline, which is not so obvious on a day like today, which is doing less ads and more efficient ads.
So the technology and the amount of information that has been available in the last 10 years for digital marketers has grown exponentially. And this has been mostly used, actually, to better target users and to optimize media buying strategy. So really, what about creativity? Well, creativity has been essentially left aside. Probably not so sad as this little teddy bear, but still, left behind. So we're living today in this world where media buying is extremely targeted, but where every user, as the question just say, every user is actually targeted with the same message, with the same generic message. So it really begs the question, aren't we missing the point of targeting in the first place? So we know from our conversation with brands and agencies that there is a really deep wish to improve digital creatives. But this is not really happening. So the question is, why is this not happening? Let's take a look at this and try to find some answers. So this is a scary chart here. I'll debrief quickly. On the top line, you see why actually this is complex. You have just more than one campaigns, obviously, to promote. You have more than one product. You have an entire portfolio of products. Then, of course, you're advertising of all formats possible, so you have to decline these formats. Then you may have different buying strategies. You may want to also involve your local retailer networks. And if you're a pan-European or international company, then you have multiple languages also. So here on top is really your first line of complexity. Then, of course, you can add DMPs, you can add segments, you should add scenarios and also A/B tests. So all in all, it's a very, very complex settings that you have, but one that you should use and to promote an individual message to every users. So this is one of the reasons why this is not happening, because this complexity is very discouraging.
And really, the obvious consequence of this complexity, and I think it was well introduced at the beginning, is really an increase of cost and an increase of also work for the agency. First, if you want to address user in a personalized way, you need more creative. This is obvious, but you have to produce more creative. Second, trafficking starts to be a mess. If you are more creative, more placement, more trafficking, and well, the campaign setup is longer and longer. And then there's something more complex. The workflow starts to be messy, because if you define which creative go on which targeted segments, that means that you need a tight collaboration between agencies and advertisers. And it's not so obvious in many campaigns. And this leads, and we all know that, to campaign delay. And I think This campaign delays are not due to the fact that people don't want to work. It's just that the complexity is really increasing. And if you want to do things correctly, complexity is increasing. But also, if we don't do that, there's a cost too. We in fact, left aside some performance that we could exploit. The first one is, what is the use of spending so much money to find granular segment if you send the same message? There was a nice statistic from AppNexus on that. 95% of campaigns are highly targeted, but with the same message, 95%. I think this is incredible. The second point is, really, you spend so much money on DMP and you're not using it, too bad. I think DMP is more useful to send personalized message than to target. Usually, the DMP can only bring you retargeting users, but it can bring you product interest that can help you to message correctly. Third point is, usually you don't do multivariant testing. We will show after why you should always do multivariant testing. It's such a good way to benchmark your creative and to benchmark your media buying. And the last, which is less obvious, but in fact in the long term you will see it, is that from one campaign to the other, if you don't measure everything, if you don't try to measure your creative, next campaign you will start from new creative, from a new agency, and you won't incrementally increase your performance based on creative.
So yes, this is hard and this is complex. And as John Nadon earlier on explained, with some work, you can actually operate in this market and grab some performance and improvement.
Yeah, and in fact, we've spent time in that. We've spent years into trying to solve this issue, and we're pretty sure there's two key things for that. First, you need technology, because it's mostly heavy lifting here. And second, you need your agency to cooperate and work together to get something more interesting than just getting what the easy path would bring you to. So I think we're going to get to a few cases of collaboration, and I'll introduce the first one. Those cases are for France, of course, but also from Germany, so it's going to be interesting for you to share that. The first case I would like to introduce is we've worked with Mini. Of course, you know Mini. In fact, this is a case where the creative agency were leading the way. And the question was, how can we get the most performance creative? Usually, we are just copying the ad from paper or from posters. What should we use for digital, and what will be the best performing ads? This was clearly the question. So just to give you a few figures about the campaign, it was acquisition, retargeting, but 320 million impressions. We were doing multivariant testing, and we were launching creative animation based on viewability. This is something key to understand the performance of the campaign. So let's get a bit deeper into this campaign.
So if I go back to the scary chart at the beginning that you probably remember, this is what it looked like for Mini. So we had 5 car models, and this was running on 5 AAB formats. Of course, we had desktop and mobile. The strategy were acquisition, retargeting, and there were some direct deals and RTB. And from the creative perspective, we had 3 different templates, so 3 introductions. We also had 9 different angles, basing also on the colors. We were testing 6 USPs and 5 CTAs. So this is here like a bunch of numbers I just threw at you, but there's actually one number that matters, is more than actually 9,282 versions. So from 5 master templates, 9,282 versions were generated and customized on the fly. And for all of you media agency here today, I think what is important to note that this was done with a dynamic tracking, meaning there's only 1 trading lines, not thousands of trading lines. So what happens when you actually customize more than 9,000 versions? Well, some more numbers. You increase performance. So for specific car views, for example, we could see an uplift of 55%. On specific colors to specific segments, then you could see up to 28%. And now on all the USPs that were tested, you could see up to 200%. Something interesting about the USPs here is that Mini used these tests on the USPs to define which USPs will be run on the offline version, so the print campaign and offline campaign that will be happening right after. So this is really important here to note that the creative agency was involved from day 1 and every day hereafter. So the learnings on each creative multivariant test that were run were transmitted and accessible to the creative agency. So this creative agency retained ownership and control of the creatives all along the test. Now, this case really proves that the value of providing creatives with data and involving creatives from day one. So it also shows, obviously, the value of multivariant testing, which Pierre-Antoine introduced at the beginning. So let's quickly take a deeper look at A/B testing and see how this should be properly run.
Yeah. I'm sorry, because I'll have to go a bit fast, because I wanted to tell so much thing about A/B testing. But just to go back to A/B testing, this guy is very interesting to read. You should read this guy. He wrote a book which is called Scientific Advertising, and it was nearly 100 years ago. So we are not starting today by introducing science in advertising, just to make sure it's clear to everyone. If you do correctly an A/B test, you need to do real-time cookie pooling. That means that when you find a new user, you need to split them into pools to make your test correctly. You need to make sure that a single user always sees the same creative. It's key, because you're just mixing data if you're not doing that. And of course, you need to exclude people you can't track to make sure they don't generate noise in your campaign. And then you need technology heavy lifting, because it's not so easy to do that impression by impression. So we need to measure in dimension independently. If you want me to explain this point, it's going to be after. Sorry. We need data at impression level. That means that we don't need global statistics. We don't need to know for each impression what happened. And we need to know for each impression, was it viewable? Because there's no need in doing A/B tests around creative if you don't use viewability impression level. And we need unconditional post-view tags, not to do attribution, but to measure the impact of the creative outside of the attribution path. Not only creative that has been attributed to the campaign should be measured. All creative should be measured. And then something which is usually missed, you need to calculate a real confidence ratio to know if you have enough volume of data to make a decision. You can see an uplift, but this uplift can be just random. So you need to calculate for each number a confidence ratio. This is just plain statistics, but it's usually missed in campaign. So I think if you're happy to discuss about this subject about A/B testing, I will be available afterward, of course.
So let's switch gear a little bit. And so we've been looking at Mini and how the creative agency empowered by technology and data should be in the driver's seat. With Foodora, we have a different setup here. The advertiser really is in the driver's seat with the internal creative studio. So Foodora has a strong visual identity and really wanted to respect and nurture this identity across all channels. And their corporate design is highly defined, and they've worked intensely on their meal photos. So you have a few examples here. So this advertiser wanted really its product, so its product in this case are restaurant food pictures, to be absolutely central to their communications, but at the same time, obviously go aggressively after performance and have the flexibility to test anything, anytime, add any data, anytime, which means pretty much every week. So this test has been started not so long ago, so we don't have much data yet. But what we see already, just by moving from static picture, generic, sent to everybody, to customized and segmented banners, we have an uplift in click-through rate, obviously, but most importantly, we have a decrease on the cost of customer acquisition. And so remember, this has been running only 2 weeks. So these are really raw improvement data before any improvement loops comes in and increase performance. So the results are coming from all countries. I mean, we're really talking here from Australia to Canada. And we're talking about more than 8,000 restaurants. And on these 8,000 restaurants, we're pushing them based on their locations and based on their opening hours. So this is a huge amount of data. So this is for all the numbers that we could list on this case. But let's not forget soft data here. Strong branding really is a key point here. So you can reinforce strong branding if you keep a consistent message across all channels, but across online and offline. Only with this consistency will you push and nurture your brand. And we all know here that brands are the main asset of any advertisers. By the way, I think Mufadal from Foodora is somewhere here today. So if you have more questions about this campaign, just feel free to contact.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next one. Or not.
Sorry for that. I'll take care.
So I didn't want to exclude you, really.
No problem. Can I get back the screen, please? OK, so just to give you a last example of what we did, this one is more publisher-centric. It's a very simple campaign we run, and I think you're going to find that obvious when I explain it. We are running on Lidigo, Kayak, Skyscanner. Someone is looking for a flight on which Voyage SNCF, which is a French train company, can offer train. If on this destination there are train available, we just add directly a nice ad with starting point, ending point, real-world price for this day. This is just, the creative looks like a sponsored response of a search engine. Just, it's a creative. It's very simple, and it's, in this case, sorry, I will show you just a quick video of what happened. Sorry, I wanted to launch that. So if someone types, well, starting point, ending point, date, you will see what happens. This is very important because we're working with publishers. This is something that the publisher is offering to advertisers. What you can see, the funny thing is the ad has shown before the search result. And it works very well due to that. Because if we are fast enough to get out the ad, it's going to work very well. Because people will look at the ad before looking at the search results. In this case, what is interesting, it is bringing value to everyone. The end user has a better ad. The publisher has a better click-through rate and better time spent on the website. And the advertiser has to pay less for its ad because they're working better. So this is a typical case where less ads make more efficient ads. So just to give you, oh, I would love to have my next slide. Sorry. Just to show you the ads, we were also A/B testing colors. We were A/B testing travel time because SNCF wanted to see if travel time against the plane travel time was an important decision matter. And so we were showing real-time price based on the day of the reservation of the plane. Everything was live. And so I'm sorry I cannot share detailed figures for that, but I can tell you that they are very happy and still spending money as we are speaking today. So just to conclude.
So now that we've taken a close look at 3 different cases from 3 different perspectives, so the creative agency, the advertisers, and the publishers, one of the most important things that we've learned is actually that no brilliant campaign happens without a creative agency. But by the same token, no creative agency or creative studio can really do the best campaign without data or technology. So to get back really to our initial statement, this is how processes need to be adapted and technology deployed. So while technology really is fundamental, I mean, we're in tech, so we do believe in technology, the point that I really want to drive home here today is that humans are creating the advertising and humans are watching the advertising. This is, I think, obvious to everybody. But we should really take this one step further and say that humans actually running the campaign should be the one receiving the learnings. Learnings shouldn't be in a black box somewhere. They should be at human level. Because only when the learnings happen at the human levels do you actually bring transparency to this industry. And I think transparency is here a keyword today. So
yeah, and just to follow on this point, everybody is speaking about machine learning. Are you sure you want the machine to learn, or do you want to learn too? Just to challenge this keyword. So, well, we are here to speak about that. When creativity drives media and data, what we see is that really everybody benefits. You've got a better communication, unified branding, better performance, media spending is better, and end user has better ads. So we feel that it's important. But the drawback of that is when creativity is used at the heart of the campaign, the organization is changing. Between agencies, it looks like a CRM campaign, not an advertising campaign. So we have to change the way we are organized if you want to use the creative as a performance lever. And last point, which is very important for us, as we said, we think that decisions are human-based. Someone has to decide who sees what ad, but has to be empowered by computer in real time because we cannot do that one by one.
So, vielen Dank für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit. Und wenn Sie noch Fragen haben, sprechen Sie mich in Anschluss gerne an. Dankeschön.